We're continuing in our journey through the Exodus of the Israelites as a parallel to our own 40-day journey of Lent, as well as the journey that we are making as a church as we anticipate the transition that should be coming this summer. We turn now to the Exodus again in the 17th chapter, verses 1 through 7. You'll remember last week we were in the wilderness of Sin when the manna and quail were provided. And we pick up from the wilderness of Sin. The whole congregation of the Israelites journeyed by stages as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. The people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses said to them, "Why are you quarreling with me? Why do you test the Lord?" But the people thirsted there for water, and the people complained against Moses and said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried out to the Lord, "What shall I do with this people? They are almost ready to stone me." The Lord said to Moses, "Go on ahead of the people and let me say it the way I read this. Go on ahead of the people and take some of the elders of Israel with you. Take in your hand the staff which you struck the Nile and go. I will be standing there in front of you on the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock and water will come out of it so that the people may drink." Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled and tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" Here ends the reading of the word. May God bless to our understanding this reading of the scripture. Will you pray with me? Gracious and loving God, as we come before you this day and have sung our praises and read from your word, be with us and help us. For now we seek to do a bold thing as we seek to interpret your word. Help us, guide us, direct us, and lead us, that the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts together might be acceptable in your sight. For you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. I think about that often. I just dare you to try to say, "You are our rock and our Redeemer," 5 times fast. It's mind-bogglingly difficult. Go ahead, do it now. I'll wait. No, I'm kidding. Since I say it every week to you, I think about it from time to time. Where are you from? People ask me that. I think they hear my accent and wonder, where are you from? And I say, well, I live in some prairie, but I'm from Texas. Trying to explain away that silly twang in my voice. My father-in-law, for Christmas, got one of those Ancestry DNA kits. Have you seen these things? To find out from your DNA where you're from. Now, I know what the report says. I know the surprise that it represented for him. And I found myself more than a little curious about whether this was quality science or maybe a little junk thrown in. Because your DNA is this blend of people, I get that, and they can track the reports of where the other people are. We're going to get musical accompaniment. Kate, can you please bring down the piano? Thank you. They can get a sense of where those patterns might have been. And yet, that stuff that makes up you seems like so much more than geography. So, forgive me, but I'm still a little skeptical. I'm also a little skeptical because I find myself wondering how much it matters. Most of you know both of my, or have at least met both of my sons. One of them could do a DNA test that would prove beyond a shadow of a doubt he is our son. The other one, not so much. For those that don't know, he's adopted. And yet, that does not make him less our son. What's his heritage, then? We're raising him as a Hamilton with a Scottish bloodline. He doesn't have a lick of Scottish blood in him. Guaranteed. Most likely African-American and Cuban, right? And we're not even 100% sure about the Cuban. That's an educated guess because the father gave us no information other than he was tan. And from Florida. So there are times I want to do that ancestry DNA test on Ryan just because I'm curious what it would say. I think it'd be fascinating if it said he was from Scotland. Yeah. And it could happen. You know, there were Moors. Not M-O-O-R-E. Well, you get the idea. And I raise all of this because the Israelites are a similar problem in the midst of this Exodus story. When you asked an Israelite, where are you from? That just made my heart so happy. I can't tell you. To see another child help another child get away from a situation that gives me joy. Where was I? The Israelites. Yes, the Israelites. Where are they from? It's kind of a trick question. Because when you think about the fact that every member of this generation that is journeying through the desert, that we talked about last week, is unable to make it to the promised land because of all their grumbling and all their whining that just God says, fine, you're going to be lost for 40 years. Every one of them was born in Egypt. Every one of them. Guaranteed. Remember, the Israelites came to Egypt because of the famine, and Joseph had found favor in Egypt and had stored food that could take care of the Israelites. They come to Egypt to get food. Joseph helps them, and then it says in a wonderful biblical transition, many, many years later, a Pharaoh of whom did not know Joseph, right? So did not know of Joseph at all, so those generations had to pass, enslaved the Israelites. Then they go through a long period of slavery. So just simple math says none of them are from the promised land. Yet they know the story. I know a story about where I'm from. I was born while my father was in graduate school at Rutgers University in Red Bank, New Jersey. I went there once. I don't want to go back. Ever. Yes, I'm taping this. It will go on the internet. I don't care. That's not where I'm from. I've told many of you in this congregation that I was born to 5 generations of Texans. My grandmother died still angry about the fact that I was born in New Jersey. But the point remains that we get that heritage not so much from our own experiences, but from the stories we've been told. Our families shape our where are you from history and story. Our church shapes those kind of stories too. If I ask First Christian Church of Janesville, Wisconsin, where are you from? Janesville, hello.
Hey,
it's right there in our name.
Hey, I born here.
Oh, excuse me. That is fantastic. I'm glad you were born here. You're the one. When I lived in Northwest Arkansas, actually this was in my notes, I just didn't expect to get that lovely transition. When I lived in Northwest Arkansas, a rapidly growing community, growing like crazy, you would meet someone that was born there, and that was a standard and meaningful joke. Oh, you're the one that was actually born here, because the rest of us came from somewhere else. And the Israelites, who are being promised a return to a homeland they have never known, are understandably gripey about it. They get out into the desert, into the wilderness, and first they had no food. Now they move to a new location. They have no water. And they're like, Moses, hello, you've got 500,000 people here. Where's the water? And Moses is getting a little leader crabby, isn't he? He's like, God told me, don't talk to me, talk to the boss. And then the boss rolls his eyes and says, or her eyes, right? We established last week. That's not on tape. That's when I turned off the tape so I wouldn't get in trouble. Boss rolls her eyes and says, follow me. I'll solve this. But then something fascinating happens. Moses strikes the rock at Horeb, and the water gushes from the rock so that, and I'm quoting there with the title, the people may drink. And did you notice what they didn't do? They didn't hoard the water this time. Remember last week we talked about the fact that in the manna and the quail, God literally sat out a test because God knew that there was going to be some hoarding of resources, some lack of trust in God. But this time, there's no mention of the people scrambling for buckets, aquariums, sheep stomachs, whatever you put water in that era. They just drank. And I think this is important because as you continue the journey through Exodus and this event that happens that I told you about before where the Israelites are grumbling and God responds and then they grumble and God responds, and it happens about 7 times. But each time they see and show a little more trust in God. The very next part of this chapter of the Exodus is the battle with the Amorites where as long as Moses holds up the rod, God is with them and they win. But if he starts to let it drop, they start to lose. And there's this wonderful verbal picture of Moses watching the battle, and he's old, right? And his arm gets tired and it starts to drop, and the people come under and prop his arm up. And it starts to drop and they start to lose. And so they put rocks under his arm to hold that staff up. And eventually the Israelites win that particular battle and defeat. Joshua is the leader of the army that defeats Amalek and the people. And I find it fascinating that that's in that same chapter. Because once again, it starts to paint the picture of the Israelites beginning to trust that God, well, how would we say it today, has got their back. Right? Starting to really believe that God is with them. You can finish from here.
Good.
Oh, for those, that's unfair to the camera people, right? The children just showed up in the lectern. Church, as we anticipate transition, as we anticipate the changes that God is calling forth, as we find ourselves grumbling about change and this and that again, look back and look forward, where we've been, where we're going, the progress we're making, the outward signs of the health that is coming in this church, and trust and believe that God's not going to let you go thirsty. You're going to be able to drink from the living well that is Jesus Christ, and that God's got your back. 2 weeks ago, I told you this is a great church. I still mean it. 2 weeks ago, I told you this is a place where someone could go and they would be hard-pressed to find a life situation that someone couldn't relate to them. And I still mean it. Last week, I told you that we need to trust that God will give us enough. And maybe not declare ourselves blessed because it sends a message of someone who feels not blessed. And this week, what I want you to see and remember by looking at your communion table, every time you worship, there is something there for you to drink. God will continue to meet you at this table. God will continue to meet all whom you will open the doors to at this table. And God will continue, just as God can draw water from a rock to provide those who need to meet God. Leaders come and go. Moses provided leadership for a battle that was won by Joshua, who is the one who actually led the people where? Into the promised land. Which, by the way, might be Wisconsin, because after all, it says it was a land flowing with milk and honey. Think about it. Just say it. It does not say cheese.
California cheese is awesome.
Yeah, but they have great marketing, so it's okay. This is going to come out horribly on tape. You people have gotten too comfortable talking back at me. But that's okay. They'll figure it out. Here's the point, church. Here's what I want you to take with you this week. Just as God provided for the Israelites, who were going from what felt like home to something they'd been told was home, but they don't even know what it is, that unknown future. This church is striving faithfully to follow God and will continue to do so. And in doing so, God will provide so that the people may drink. Let our thanks be to God. Amen.